The complete works of Swami Vivekananda. Jnana Yoga, Chapter 3, Maya and Illusion, Part 3. Attempts have been made in Germany to build a system of philosophy on the basis that the infinite has become the finite. Such attempts are also made in England, and the analysis of the position of these philosophers is this: that the infinite is trying to express itself in this universe, and that there will come a time when the infinite will succeed in doing so. It is all very well, and we have used the words infinite and manifestation and expression and so on. But philosophers naturally ask for a logical, fundamental basis for the statement that the finite can fully express the infinite. The absolute and the infinite can become this universe only by limitation. Everything must be limited that comes through the senses or through the mind or through the intellect, and for the limited to be the unlimited is simply absurd and can never be. The Vedanta, on the other hand, says that it is true that the absolute or the infinite is trying to express itself in the finite, but there will come a time when it will find that it is impossible, and it will then have to beat a retreat. And this beating a retreat means renunciation, which is the real beginning of religion. Nowadays, it is very hard even to talk of renunciation. It was said of me in America that I was a man who came out of a land that had been dead and buried for 5,000 years and talked of renunciation. So says perhaps the English philosopher. Yet, it is true that it is the only path to religion. Renounce and give up. What did Christ say? He that loseth his life for my sake shall find it. Again and again did he preach renunciation as the only way to perfection. There comes a time when the mind awakes from this long and dreary dream. The child gives up its play and wants to go back to its mother. It finds the truth of the statement. Desire is never satisfied by the enjoyment of desire. It only increases the more as fire when butter is poured upon it. This is true of all sense enjoyments, of all intellectual enjoyments, and of all the enjoyments of which the human mind is capable. They are nothing. They are within Maya, within this network beyond which we cannot go. We may run therein through infinite time and find no end. And whenever we struggle to get a little enjoyment, a mass of misery falls upon us. How awful is it? When I think of it, I cannot but consider that this theory of Maya, this statement that it is all Maya and it's the best and only explanation. What an amount of misery there is in this world. And if you travel among various nations, you will find that one nation attempts to cure its evils by one means and another by another. The very same evil has been taken up by various races, and attempts have been made in various ways to check it. Yet, no nation has succeeded. If it has been minimized at one point, a mass of evil has been crowded at another point. Thus it goes. The Hindus, to keep up a high standard of chastity in the race, have sanctioned child marriage, which in the long run has degraded the race. At the same time, I cannot deny that this child marriage makes the race more chaste. what would you have? If you want the nation to be more chaste, you weaken men and women physically by child marriage. On the other hand, are you in England any better off? No, because chastity is the life of a nation. Do you not find in history that the first death sign of a nation has been unchastity? When that has entered, the end of the race is in sight. Where shall we get a solution of these miseries then? If parents select husbands and wives for their children, then this evil is minimized. The daughters of India are more practical than sentimental. But very little of poetry remains in their lives. Again, if people select their own husbands and wives, that does not seem to bring much happiness. The Indian woman is generally very happy. There are not many cases of quarreling between husband and wife. On the other hand, in the United States, where the greatest liberty obtains, the number of unhappy homes and marriages is large. Unhappiness is here, there, and everywhere. What does it show? That after all, not much happiness has been gained by all these ideals. We all struggle for happiness, and as soon as we get a little happiness on the one side, on the other side comes the unhappiness. Shall we not work to do good then? Yes, with more zest than ever. But what this knowledge will do for us is to break our fanaticism. The Englishman will no more be a fanatic and curse the Hindu. He will learn to respect the customs of different nations. There will be less of fanaticism and more of real work. Fanatics cannot work. They waste 3/4 of their energy. It is the level-headed, calm, practical man who actually works. So the power to work will increase from this idea. Knowing that this is the state of things, there will be more patience. The sight of misery or of evil will not be able to throw us off balance and make us run after shadows. Therefore, patience will come to us, knowing that the world will have to go on in its own way. If, for instance, all men have become good, the animals will have in the meanwhile evolved into men and will have to pass through the same state, and so with the plants. But only one thing is certain: the mighty river is rushing towards the ocean, and all the drops that constitute the stream will in time be drawn into that boundless ocean. So in this life, with all its miseries and sorrows, its joys and smiles and tears, one thing is certain: that all things are rushing towards their goal, and it is only a question of time when you and I and plants and animals and every particle of life that exists must reach the infinite ocean of perfection, must attain freedom to God. Let me repeat once more that the Vedantic position is neither pessimism nor optimism. It does not say that this world is all evil or all good. It says that our evil is no less value than our good, and our good is of no more value than our evil. They are bound together. This is the world. And knowing this, you work with patience. What for? What should we work? If this is the state of things, what shall we do? Why not become agonistics? The modern agonistics also know there is no solution of this problem, no getting out of this evil of Maya, as we say in our language. Therefore, they tell us to be satisfied and enjoy life. Here, again, is a mistake, a tremendous mistake, a most illogical mistake, and it is this: What do you mean by life? Do you mean only the life of the senses? In this, every one of us differs only slightly from the brutes. I am sure that no one is present here whose life is only in the senses. Then this present life means something more than that. Our feelings, thoughts, and aspirations are all part and parcel of our life, and is not the struggle towards the area ideal towards perfection. One of the most important components of what we call life, according to the agonistics, we must enjoy life as it is. But this life means, above all, this search after the ideal. The essence of life is going towards perfection. We must have that. And therefore, we cannot be agonistics or take the world as it appears. The agonistic position takes this life minus the ideal component to be all that exists. And this, the agonistic claims, cannot be reached. Therefore, he must give up the search. This is what is called Maya, this nature, this universe. All religions are more or less attempts to get beyond nature, the crudest or the most developed, expressed through mythology or symbology, stories of gods, angels or demons, or through stories of saints or seers, great men or prophets, or through abstractions of philosophy, all that have one object. All are trying to get beyond these limitations. In one word, they are all struggling towards freedom. Man feels, consciously or unconsciously, that he is bound. He is not what he wants to be. It was taught to him that at the very moment he began to look around, that very instant he learned that he was bound. And he also found that there was something in him which wanted to fly around, fly beyond, where the body could not follow, but which was as yet chained down by this limitation. Even in the lowest of religious ideas, where departed ancestors and other spirits, mostly violent and cruel, lurking about the houses of their friends, fond of bloodshed and strong drink, are worshipped, even there we find one common factor, that of freedom. The man who wants to worship the gods sees in them, above all things, greater freedom than in himself. If a door is closed, he thinks the gods can get through it, and that the walls have no limitations for them. The idea of freedom increases until it becomes an ideal of a personal God, of which the central concept is he, a being beyond limitation of nature of Maya. I see before me, as it were, that in some of those forest retreats, this question is being discussed by those ancient sages of India, and in one of them, where even the oldest and the holiest fails to reach the solutions, a young mind stands up in the midst of them and declares, "Hear ye children of immortality, hear ye who live in the highest of places, I have found the way. By knowing him who is beyond darkness, we can go beyond death." This Maya is everywhere, it is terrible, yet we have to work through it. The man who says that he will work when the world has become all good, and then he will enjoy bliss, is as likely to succeed as the man who sits beside the Ganga and says, "I will ford the river when all the water has run into the ocean." The way is not with Maya but against it. This is another fact to learn. We are not born as helpers of nature, but competitors with nature. We are its bondmasters, but we bind ourselves down. Why is this house here? Nature did not build it. Nature says, "Go and live in the forest." Man says, I will build a house and fight with nature." And he does so. The whole of humanity is a continuous fight against the so-called laws of nature, and man gains in the end. Coming to the internal world, there too the same fight is going on. This fight between the animal man and the spiritual man, between light and darkness, and here too man becomes victorious. He, as it were, cuts his way out of nature to freedom. We see then that beyond this Maya, the Vedantic philosophers find something which is not bound by Maya. And if we get there, we shall not be bound by Maya. This idea is in some form or another the common property of all religions. But with the Vedanta, it is only the beginning of religion and not the end. The idea of a personal God, the ruler and creator of this universe, as he has been styled, the ruler of Maya or nature, is not the end of these Vedantic ideas. It is only the beginning. The idea grows and grows until the Vedantist finds that he who he thought was standing outside is he himself and is the reality within. He is the one who is free and who through limitation thought he was bound.